Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us again. My name is Stefan Schinkel. I'm the Chief Sales Officer at dotCMS. And today I'm joined by David Ebel, CEO of CBay Group. And today we'll go into the topic of content and commerce and how retailers can differentiate and leverage API-driven platforms to be successful. Before we get started, some housekeeping. The lines are muted during the webinar. You'll have an opportunity to post questions in the chat, and a recording will be available afterwards. Before we go into the topic, I'd like to introduce dotCMS real quickly. We were founded in 2003. We're an enterprise-grade content management platform. We have offices in Miami, Florida, Boston, and San Jose, Costa Rica. We have a global partner network, and we're currently making significant investments in our product as we want to be in the top 3 in the next 3 years. We work for about 150 brands across any industry, including retail. About 85% is in North America, but we have a growing customer base in the rest of the world. The current landscape for retailers is, let's say, challenging. There's the dominance of Amazon, a lot of competition, and increasing expectations of your customers. And Amazon is basically killing it, right? You don't have their cash, their distribution network, and their proprietary technology and scale to basically attack that competition. And on top of that, according to a recent survey, 53% of consumers would like a Prime-like service, and 60% also wants Amazon's same-day delivery. So to top it off, 60% also is more likely to shop with a digitally innovative retailer. And the good news is 73% plan to spend more online in the future. So what should you do if you are in retail? Well, as I mentioned in one of our previous webinars, and based on research of the World Economic Forum with Accenture, there are 3 pillars to differentiate in digital these days. First of all is focus on end-to-end experience rather than products and services. Secondly, hyper-personalization. And lastly, access-based consumption models. So what does that mean from a content management perspective? In regards to the focus on experiences, another research by Accenture this time also tells us that customers want faster service, and they also want more convenience when they're dealing with you, Mr. Retailer. So if that is important to your customers, it might help if you have the technology to deliver on this premise. And that's where we believe no-code and orchestration of content and experiences come into play. So what does that mean, right? So speed basically translates into being able to create, manage, approve, integrate and leverage data without any coding. And secondly, convenience basically translates into the orchestration of the delivery of that experience that mimics your customer's preference. Hyper-personalization basically means you want to collect and aggregate any available data, mind GDPR, by the way, in your platform to enhance and hyper-personalize the experience. So basically, use data from your marketing platforms, but also your transactional platforms, along with the data that you collect and generate in the experience layer. It also means that you want to personalize based on content engagement intent using predictive analytics and using AI and machine learning to do this at scale. Um, but basically, what I want to say from a content management perspective is that the new norm in content management and content and commerce for sure is that all of this only works if you can expose it as a microservices over an API, right? So whether it's content, personalization settings, rendering layout, permissions, anything, right? So this is what it means from a content perspective and what I wanted to share with you guys. David, how about the commerce side of the story?
Thank you, Stefan. Again, my name is David Ebal. I'm with a company called CBay Group, and we're very lucky to be participating in this webinar today with the dotCMS team. And I want to start out by thanking you for joining. Everybody has quite a busy schedule these days and only one lunch hour on average. So it means a lot that you're taking the time to learn a little bit about these companies today and hopefully come away with a few ideas on how you can integrate content and commerce efficiently on your own properties and with your own team. And I encourage you to ask questions. There'll be an opportunity at the end to ask a few questions, and then the dotCMS and CBay team are here ongoing for any questions that you may have. And our contact information is readily available, and I encourage you to reach out direct with anything that you may need. So with that being said, I'm going to cover off on a few slides that talk about the company, and then get into the overview of the webinar, and then we'll start right in to the webinar today and get everybody out of here on time if we can, plus probably a few minutes to spare. So CBay Group. CBay Group is a specialized consulting services firm. We are based in Orange County, California, with offices in Newport Beach and Westport, Connecticut. Our heritage is digital commerce services. Personally, I've spent my entire career working to bring better e-commerce solutions to the market for inspirational customers, and I founded the company to advance that mission. We treat our customers as partners, and that's really the motto of the business. How do we develop a more technology focused partner for our clients? Everything we do is based around developing that idea and leveraging the experience that we have to apply those lessons and add value to our clients and add value to our partners in every way possible. That's what this business is all about. Our service range is fairly typical, though we remain agnostic when it comes to specific technologies or large platforms. At the end of the day, want to be prepared to help our customers advance their own agendas better, rather than start the conversation with a discussion about replatforming, for example. We don't come in and say, these are the technologies we implement. We come in and say, this is the technology partner we are. These are the things that we see work really well in the market. Now, how can we help you do what you do better? We don't really look at ourselves as the experts. We look at ourselves as the partner and the specialists. We look at our customers as the experts. At the end of the day, you're the expert on your business, you're the expert on what you've built, and you're the expert on where you want to go. It's our belief that the complexity of the digital commerce marketplace has increased to the point where only by having a trusted technology partner can you navigate the waters as efficiently as you need to be competitive and ultimately beat the competition. So we bring to the table over 18 years of digital commerce experience. That's based on mostly my career, as well as some of the very experienced leadership team that we've developed here in Orange County, as well as a global development team that we have providing those services as required for each of the projects. We work with fantastic clients. This slide could certainly be updated. We've grown quite a bit, but I hope that it gives you an idea that we work with great customers, and we've been very successful at that. and we're looking forward to continuing that mission. Let's talk a little bit about special expertise and partnership. So here are a couple of platforms that we work with in a big way. So we are leading Commerce Tools implementation partner. We formed a relationship with Commerce Tools very early on in the founding of the company. We have seen the success and we believe in microservices technology architectures. And we have seen over the last 12 months some explosive growth as the rest of the industry is catching on. And so our partnership with Commerce Tools is really important to us. We are doing work for their clients, and we expect to do more and more of that work over the next few quarters. Again, simply because each Commerce Tools engagement is unique. It completely it offers customers as much or as little as they need to get what they're trying to accomplish done. It's a pay-as-you-go platform, and the scalability and flexibility is unmatched. So this fits really well with the types of projects that we do, and so we partner with them to bring that to the market. dotCMS is a great API-driven content management system that if you're looking to build a customer experience platform, these two working together, one to bring that content management core functionality and one to bring that commerce core functionality together. This enables customers to really develop truly unique competitive offerings on a flexible, cost-effective platform that we at CBay Group can get to market quicker than you'd imagine. These type of technologies are fantastic because, again, we can get moving on them and have proof of concepts up and running in almost no time at all. All of this technology really works well with the continuous integration, continuous delivery, or the DevOps model. So being a somewhat new consultancy, we're very fortunate to start that way from the ground up. So any technology that requires a waterfall approach or requires we hire or train 25 people in an exclusive proprietary technology is not as good of a fit for an agency like us. What we're really good at is hiring the best people who understand contemporary delivery methodologies and getting them focused on solving a client problem. Everybody at this company is concerned about our clients' ROI. That's the name of the game. Every management meeting that I'm in is focused on those three letters, and that's how we build our long-term partnerships. All right, now let's move into the discussion for today. The title of the webinar is Content and Commerce, Data-Driven Customer Experiences Through Microservices. I'm going to break that down into three parts. Part one is integrating content. What we're going to do here is take a look at some of the different ways that retailers have integrated content into the buying experience. We're going to try to agree on how we talk about content and commerce. And then we're going to look at why some retailers don't need a content approach. These things I hope are going to frame the conversation. Obviously, we could probably spend an entire week talking about different approaches to integrating content and commerce. But by spending a little bit of time looking at a few examples and talking about the stories behind them, I think it'll help us proceed with a more aligned understanding together. In part two, we'll look at some of the challenges that occur when integrating content. We'll talk through the impacts of content on conversion, on traffic, on average order value, and we'll talk about the fundamental problem being managed when we're integrating content and commerce, and that is how our performance KPIs are staying in the green, how they're elevating, what are we ultimately trying to do by adding these interactions to our shopper experience. In part three, plan for the previously unexpected. So here I'll call out a few things that we've seen along the way in implementing these solutions that are probably not things you would normally expect, but by having that heads up, by having that experience at the table, you can easily avoid a few pitfalls that are likely to occur. All right, let's get started. So in this section, let's spend a moment discussing what content and commerce really means. And let's look at a few examples that show these two aspects of experience coming together. aspects of experience. That's really what these things are. It's important to categorize this. When we talk about content or commerce, we are talking about aspects of a customer experience. Everything that matters at the end of the day, in this conversation at least, is customer experience. If we're as long as we're talking, let me take a break. So as long as we're talking about making improvements to the key business drivers of digital commerce, those business drivers, conversion, average order value, traffic, if it's these numbers we want to impact, and we do, then we can say, and we can put off the table that implementing a new ERP, for example, or switching platforms, in and of itself isn't going to necessarily move the needle. So everything that matters in this discussion is essentially customer experience of one kind or another. Ideally, it's a good kind, or at least a better customer experience. And assuming that anyone who has a few $100 million of product to sell or more has already entered the world of e-commerce, we're also talking about changes. So we're talking about changes to an existing customer experience. Unfortunately, it's long gone are the days when we had the luxury of designing brand new shopping experiences for the first time for a retailer or brand that had not offered e-commerce yet. Those were the good old days, and I think a lot of us played a huge role in getting those sites out there into the marketplace. But again, those days are long gone. That being said, it does remind me of a good starting point, and that's the last time that I was personally involved in such a situation. So way back in, looks like 2012, as I recall, I think we launched in December of that year. I was fortunate to work on the project to bring to the table Aritzia, which is a Vancouver-based fashion retailer, to bring their first ever e-commerce store live. On this project, I was leading the strategic consulting team and enjoyed 18 months of organizational planning, vendor selection, requirements prioritization, user story definition. You get the picture. From the start, though, the foundational direction provided by the CEO, Brian Hill, was to leverage content and commerce to create a shopping experience that would not just sell to customers that had a pent-up demand to buy, but an experience that would engage the existing audience in a broad way and drive new traffic and brand credibility through the production of this great fashion content. Now, if we move over to the site today, what we're going to see is in many ways different than the initial launch. But that initial launch was the most successful new site launch that I've ever been a part of in almost 20 years now of doing this. The point is that it wasn't luck, it was planning and executing with a winning strategy. And that strategy included content production, intelligent integration of that content into the buying process, and really importantly, rapid site revisions to account for any negative impacts to conversion that the content was having. So let's take a look through the site now for a few minutes and see where they are today and how they've sort of settled on migrating content and commerce together. When we go to the Aritzia homepage, for example, what we see is immediately 3 sets of content, right? We don't see any buy buttons, we don't see any prices, we don't see any sale information. What we see is content regarding an outfit, and then some information that we can look at regarding this Cohen series. When we shop, we're not shopping the product, we're not shopping the price, we're shopping the collection. The collection itself in this case is the content, and that's important. As Aritzia moved on from their launch, and they're not currently a client to be very clear, but I do know them well and have tremendous respect for the business and the site itself. It looks to me at least that they've reduced some of the burden on creating magazine style content and integrating that into the buying experience, but they have not eliminated it. Rather, they've realized the lowest common denominator of what's the minimum amount of content that they need to sell the vision, to sell the story, and not interrupt the shopper experience, the shopper buying experience. This page, for example, after you click on the series, you see this image, you see this blurb about the Cohen series. Then once you scroll down is when you start to see what some may say is a little bit more of a typical buying experience. But again, you'll notice in these four sections, we're not seeing prices. We're not seeing a typical buying module. Instead, you're seeing content. So content in the case of Aritzia today um, doesn't necessarily look like content of the day that it launched. And it may not even look like content in the way that you're envisioning out of the gate. But what I want you to see here is that it very much still is content, but it's a vision of content that's based on the science of those user behaviors. I want to take a second and migrate over to another product page, this time for the TNA Stride pant. TNA is another Aritzia brand, and this is a lower cost pant here for $60. When we look at this, we can recognize it as a product detail page. That's fairly clear. You have your basic product information, you have your options, sizing, your add to cart button, wish list, all of the things that you would expect to see in a page like this. The piece of content that's notable on this page is the designer's notes. Many of you, I'm sure, are familiar with adding these content pieces into your product information management system or your web content management system. This is nothing new, and this is sort of a bare minimum of what I would call content in commerce. It's really when you scroll down that you start to see some unique integrations here. Now, the more like this feature, again, is very similar to what you see on almost any website, but scroll a little further and you're going to see a couple of interesting pieces. The looks we love piece is a very low risk, high value integration of content in commerce. So what we see here is we click this and it's going to pull up a seemingly independent picture. This may be a picture that comes from Instagram. It's a picture that could come from any content source, social media source. But the important part is that it allows users to shop through real pictures of people wearing the real products. And the content integration here happens in the top right side. So as I scroll through these looks, as I scroll through these social media posts, I see something I like and I have that immediate integration of commerce that allows me to click it, to select it, to buy it, and make it mine. So this is a really tight and effective integration of content and commerce that Aritzia is using. It's one that you see out there quite a bit, but I think it's a particularly elegant implementation. And what I like the most, and what I really want to mention here, is that this is something that can be tracked through analytics very easily. So we can add this and these type of content to pages. We can use our data science and our technology pieces to determine how it's making positive improvements to our e-commerce business. And we can mitigate any risk of inserting content into a site that starts to harm our conversion, which is something that we'll talk about more in just a little bit. Okay, I want to navigate back to the Aritzia homepage and just take one more look at an area of content and commerce integration before we move on to another really interesting example and a little bit foreshadowing. It's an example that has absolutely no content and commerce integration. And I'll talk about in a minute why I would be showing you that and what it means and how to think through it. So back to Aritzia. So when we go on Aritzia, we can also scroll down here and see another very typical but very well done integration of content and commerce, and that's through something called trends. So when I click over here on the Aloha free section, again, I'm not seeing a tremendous amount of content here. This is really one or two photographs put side by side with a link. This doesn't take a tremendous amount of time to put together. And at the same time, it's very easily measurable. We can use Google Analytics and other technologies to easily see what the impact of adding this content block to the homepage is. And is it generating positive ROI or is it harming it? So I love this. I love that it's low footprint and low effort to get it going. So let's check it out. We click on Aloha Free, and what we see here is a trend in focus page. So this is a hybrid. This is a hybrid of a content page, a category page, product listing page, and a few other things all rolled into one. what I want everybody to see when they're looking at pages like this is exactly what this webinar is about, which is the merging of content and commerce. If content and commerce are to merge, then they should stop looking like separate items. They should fit all together, and we should melt away the concept of a product page, melt away the concept of a product listing page, melt away the concept of a magazine page. And what you should see instead is a user experience centered page based on analytics that's really providing customers with something that's as close to what they want as possible. Here in the Aloha Free Trend and Focus page, the amount of content, and if you think about, when you think content, you think text, then let this dispel that because the amount of text on this page is extremely minimal. Instead, you've got products. Yes, products. These are products you can easily click on and buy, but you can scroll further and start to see other elements pop up. You can see make a match. You can see products of a different style. You can scroll all the way down and be prompted to other trend pages. So this page, bookmark it, save it. This is an excellent way to use trends and the merging of content components and commerce components to ultimately create a page that does one thing and one thing only, convert purchases. That's what we all want to do. And what this is about is how do we leverage technology, design, analytics to create those pages. And when you see a page like this, or when I see a page like this, I see the result of all of those components coming together for the customer's best interest and the growth of the e-commerce channel. So there are multiple ways to integrate content into the commerce experience, and there are multiple reasons to do it. Here it may be helpful to look at one more example. This again is a site that I was fortunate to consult on during its first ever direct-to-consumer e-commerce launch, something that again those days are gone unfortunately. But this site is BJs Wholesale. Now this one, as I mentioned, was quite a bit earlier in my career, and unlike Aritzia, the BJs Wholesale case, the BJs Wholesale use case had no use for integrating content, and it was in fact nowhere in the strategy. And what we see today, unlike Aritzia, is exactly the same. The site aims to sell products to its members. Straightforward, simple, and it's done without any of the complexity required to develop a content and commerce approach. When we look at this experience, it's instructive to compare it to the brand in the site that you're working with today. Does your site look similar? As we click through and we see our categories and our products, as we click the shop link and go into a popular category, we see a product listing page. This with its filtered and faceted navigation on the left-hand side, with its various promotional areas, with its pricing and comparison tools, this is a well-executed e-commerce site. But does it look like the site you have today? Does it look like the site that you envision for the future? If it does look like the site you have today and the site you envision for the future, do you have similar reasons for this approach? If you're familiar with BJ's, they're a very large corporation. They're East Coast. Their West Coast competitors would be Costco and Sam's Club, although there are Sam's Clubs that compete with BJ's on the East Coast as well, or there were. The nature of this site is membership-based wholesale sales. So people do not come to BJ's to find out what the latest trends in bedding or fashion are. Rather, they come to BJ's Wholesale for the selection and for the pricing. So this is in no way to call out a site for not doing a good job. I think quite the opposite. This is to call out that there are multiple approaches to this. And similar to the responsive design debate of a few years back, we have to take a step back and say that one single approach is never right for everybody in this space. In the same way that for many retailers, it may make sense to have a separately developed set of mobile templates independent of your desktop site. It may make sense to have a responsive approach for others. So just because something is new and something is cool and something is trending, it doesn't mean we should just accept it as what we need to be doing. We need to look at the reasons for why we're implementing any new technology or user experience approach and make sure that that makes sense for our business. That's how we keep positive ROI, and that's how we keep moving in the right direction for our customers. Before we get into the challenges and methods of integrating content, where we'll talk a little bit more about the technology approach, leveraging microservices and dotCMS, let's look at another example of content and commerce experience and this one is really top notch. With Aritzia, what I think we see is an elegant and seamless integration of content and commerce. With BJs Wholesale, obviously, we're looking at the complete absence of it. What we're going to take a look at next is an approach that puts content and commerce integration at the forefront of the growth and success strategy. The site we're looking at now is called Matches Fashion. You may or may not be familiar with this story, but this is a company that through the implementation of a specific strategy has achieved tremendous growth and success, and ran into them at Shop Talk, where CBay Group was working closely with Commerce Tools to get the most out of that event. And what we see here is this very thoughtful job of leveraging content to drive digital commerce revenue. In fact, I saw their CEO, Rick Jerome, at Shop Talk, and he said that 35% of customer purchases online come from content engagement. That's insane, but it's a sign of what customers are seeking out. What you see here didn't just happen organically. This wasn't just somebody adding content to see if it worked. This is driven by that strategic vision set by Ulrich, and it's executed very, very well. Just to scroll through a little bit here, you can see how much content is thrown at these pages to attract users. We do have these commerce components that are stylishly added in. They're relevant to the content pieces. But in each case, whenever you're looking at a piece of content, not far away is the ability to buy. So that is the integration piece. This isn't just a magazine site. This is a site where you've got a continual integration of the products into the content pieces. You can see shop now, shop the shoot, ever drawing customers into these purchase paths. And once a customer gets into the purchase path is where you see the care and attention paid to not losing them. That's intelligent. That's the type of work that needs to be done in order to keep those customers, to keep the numbers moving in the positive direction, and they do a fantastic job at that. So there are ways to make content a part of your brand from the get-go. There are brands that don't have a justifiable need for the expense and complexity of content. And then there are sites that deliver customers with the content and buying experience they expect. And in each case, success. And that's really what we want at the end of the day. So let's get back to the agenda and go over some of the challenges of integrating content and how both technology and operational execution can play a role in reducing or eliminating them. This next slide is going to talk about just a few of the areas that present challenges when integrating content and commerce. We'll start at the top. So let's talk about branding. That's where we focused on most of today. For your brand, do you have the ability and clarity of the type of content that you're going to produce and the ability to do it? This is definitely not something that works well when it's launched in an initial version and then 6 to 12 months later that content is still up there. Content that's effective is fresh and drives customers to understand your brand as a leader and a place that they should check back with to both engage their hobby or their passion, but also to learn more about the area that your products exist within. Frequency is what that means. And then purpose, why are you adding content to the site? For instance, BJs Wholesale is an example we could look at and say, they evaluated that and didn't see the need. But Aritzia and Matches Fashion, for two other examples, likely have different answers to that question. So I think this is something that has to be answered for each company, each brand, on their own. What is the purpose of this? And it's okay if the answer is we want to drive conversion. We want to grow our e-commerce channel, and we think that this is the best way possible. Well, let's validate that through testing. Let's put in some content and commerce pieces. Let's see the type of engagement that we get. Let's perhaps drive traffic to those through email, or through paid search, paid ads. And let's see if the customers that you are working with respond well to that approach. By dialing that in and redefining the purpose in more detail, you can ensure that the strategy will be effective. Let's move on to the technology. So the biggest problem, and the reason this is in the center, the biggest perceived problem, and I think in many ways the one that's most important to overcome, is that of the existing platforms or technologies. So does the platform that you're working with today readily support the ability for business users to develop engaging content, integrate that content with commerce components, get that verified and tested in the staging environment, and then launch and measure the effectiveness of those changes? In most cases, in my experience, the answer to this is no. So this quickly translates into what is the most effective way to shore up that gap. That's where microservices approaches like commerce tools and dotCMS can make a huge impact. We can implement components of commerce tools, only the components that are necessary to get this done. You will pay for only the components of those that you use, and we'll be able to run proof of concepts to validate that, yes, this will generate positive ROI. Yes, this will work for our customers in the future of our digital commerce. So a microservices approach allows us to take content within dotCMS, leverage personalization, leverage analytical tagging, leverage product catalog and order capabilities from commerce tools on top of the existing solutions that you have today. These are not 6-month projects. These are proof of concepts that are executed in a few weeks. And if successful, they are built upon from that point forward without losing anything. We do not throw away any of the proof of concept work, and we do not pay for anything through dotCMS or commerce tools that we are not using. So this represents a fundamental change from where we were from a technology perspective years ago. And I think understanding that and making these new advances in microservices architectures work for you is probably the single most advantageous thing you can do for your business. So beyond existing systems integrations, which we can talk about further in a future webinar, we need to look at the ease of updates. So business users have to be able to work with marketers, work with graphic designers, and compose these content elements and get them up to the site on a regular basis. Those things have to happen with the appropriate workflows, QA, and it's got to happen quickly. So you need to be looking at how are we updating this content on a staggered fashion on a weekly basis, and ensure that the systems and the tools and the people are in place to do that. The ability to measure. So I'm going to add to that not only the ability to measure, but the ability to change via artificial intelligence. Or when we talk about artificial intelligence, we're simply talking about A/B testing. So we want to be able to roll out a new piece of content to a segment of users, not the entire group, but just to a subset of the group, and identify how does that perform against our baseline. If we're used to getting a conversion rate of 0.5 and we roll this out to this set of customers, what is the impact to the conversion on those customers? How does it compare? And if it's not better, dump it, try again. But if it is better, then quickly roll that out so that we get a larger group of customers to see it and convert at a higher rate. This is technology that I've been advocating for a decade. The technology to do it is there. The technology to do it is mature, and everybody should be doing it. And I assume you are doing it. I think to be competitive today, this has become a standard. But as we move into the content game where our potential impacts on conversion could be greater, the need to have a robust A/B testing capability and ability to measure is only increased. And then lastly, a large one, but a small bullet point, which is segmentation and personalization. So rather than taking a blunt approach of pushing out content to users, we need to be adding some sophistication to that and looking at how we develop content specifically for our customer segments. From a technology perspective, again, microservices architectures allow us to do this with these tools in a very cool way, very quickly, in a very cost-effective way. Are you doing that today? Are you developing content for a certain persona of customer? Are you rolling it out to that persona of customer? Are you seeing the increases in conversion based on that type of targeting? I hope the answer is yes. If the answer isn't yes, then let's get it done with something we can do, and it's no longer the monumentous task that it has been in the past. And then third bullet, management. So this is an ongoing process. How are we looking at our analytics? Do we have a sophisticated set of analytics that say when these numbers move up, we're doing well, and when they move down, we're doing poorly? Does everyone who touches a piece of this within an organization understand that? When we started the company, we invested quite a bit in developing a set of operational dashboards. We call it CBay Tower. It is a SaaS solution, or we call digital commerce success as a service. We offer it to any customer that we are actively working with. It is a set of 4 standardized screens that tell you how your business is doing versus your goals. And it's something that you display on the CEO's office as well as the call center floor. And everyone walking the halls you should see this so that when we're making these content integrations and we're rolling out new content on a regular basis, we don't risk infighting. We have a unified view of what it means for this business to be successful and on track. Since I brought it up, I'll just take a second to show what those 4 screens look like. From our perspective, for most businesses, this is what we want to see. We want to see traffic. We want to make sure that our email campaigns, our paid campaigns, and our organic traffic is all at levels that we would normally expect. We want to look at today's sales. We want to know that we're on target. Are we in the green? Are we going to meet the numbers we projected? And then we want to look at orders. Do we have specific high value orders that need special attention? Is the rate at which we're fulfilling orders good enough, or are we generating a backlog? Then we want to look at sales trends. How are we doing year over year? Are we growing as a business on an annual basis in the right way? And so these 4 screens make up CBay Tower. And again, any customer that we work with, because I need my team to be focused on these numbers, we implement it. And then by giving it to our customers, they oftentimes can get value out of it themselves, and that's great, icing on the cake. So last 2 under management are operational dashboards. We just talked about that, and then omni-channel experiences. So when we look at content, we hope that a piece of content we generate is going to be responsive, and that when we're testing that and rolling it out, that it works effectively on mobile as it does on tablet, as it does on desktop, as it does in store, and with the customer clienteling app. That's not always the case. And so from a management perspective, we need to be looking out for those things, and part of our checklist must be measuring and looking out for the effectiveness of our campaigns across all channels. I've seen many cases where content and commerce integrations work very poorly in store. A rep using a clienteling app that is essentially working off the same side as the public can be very negatively impacted by a content and commerce integration. It can hurt their ability to drive towards the functionality that they need in store. Of course, if you have a separate clienteling app, a separate POS handling this for you, it's a non-issue. But what we see more and more these days is the integration of all of these technologies. So from a management perspective, it's definitely something that we need to make sure we're looking at. So obviously in the time we have today, we went over just a few of the challenges of integrating these things, but I do hope that some of them rang a few bells and gave you some things to think about. I look forward to doing more of these webinars, and I look forward to engaging with you and talking more about some of these challenges. I think it would make a lot of sense to do a webinar really specifically focused just on the technology of integrating a content e-commerce solution from a microservices perspective, and I'll talk to Stefan and his team about when we can get that on the calendar. But next, in part 3, we'll talk a little bit about some of the things that you may not expect that could come up along the way, positive and negative, and then roll into some next steps in Q&A. So finally today, we're going to talk a little bit about the next slide, which is plan for the previously unexpected. As I mentioned. So I'll go through some of these, but these are here provided here more as prompts to think through just 4 of the areas that may be impacted by any endeavors that you take on. First, customer service. Some things to think through. Customers may be calling in and calling in specifically about content on the site. You may get customers asking new questions, questions that your team has not heard before. How do you direct them to handle those inquiries, and how do you direct them to handle those inquiries in a way that drives new orders? Does your team understand how to order on behalf of customers? There may be impacts to any tools that they use. It may create some additional need to ensure that they can order on behalf of customers and help customers through the buying experience. They can only do that if they understand the buying experience. So include customer service and everything before you roll it out. And then really importantly, how are you integrating this content into the physical experience? So if you go out and you develop, great content and you've got it integrated into digital and you're seeing it, customers respond really well to that. Think about how you can make that physical for them. Is it a magazine? Is it a brochure? Is it a card? Is there something that goes into the box that they actually open and at the end of the day that ties them to your great commerce experience on the website? That can go quite a long way. Organic search. So we're going to have a lot more content on the site. So how do we enforce keyword strategies with the content developers? You may be already doing this today. You may need to make some modifications. As you replace content over time, how do you maintain the links that are generated? How do you make sure that you take advantage of it even as that content gets replaced on the various pages? There's a technology component in here as well as a marketing one. Cross-department collaboration. To me, this is at the heart of an effective digital business. You need to align the purchasing, planning, design, IT, and digital team, not just to the same core metrics of success, but also into the day-to-day operational activities. Let's look at QA. How does the QA team start to understand the content team as a customer? It's not just a matter of the page working anymore. It's a matter of the page working to the goals of that content team or that marketing team. And do you have a single methodology for company-wide project execution and management? Are your teams working in separate styles, and would it benefit them, and would it benefit the speed at which you can make changes to the site by rolling out a single strategy? And then one thing that's important and something that we actually do quite a bit of is business plan development. Does your digital commerce business plan account for all of this? Does it account for the expenses and the forecasted performance? And how are you looking at that and then integrating that into the dashboard? Something we talked about a minute ago, the importance of this operational dashboard. Do you have the goals plugged in? Do you have the team aligned to those goals, and are they working to achieve them? When they make their decisions about content in A/B testing, are they doing it based on achieving a set goal, or are they doing it for some other reason? So these are just a few of the things that we want to take a look at, and I think if you think about them now, it'll go a long way towards making sure that your project overall stays on track. Before I go, one additional slide with some key takeaways for you to read. And I encourage you to visit us at http://www.cbay.group. That's our website. You can always reach out. My email address is david@cbay.group. SEBAE. Thanks to everybody for taking the time today. And I certainly look forward to the opportunity to speak with you again very shortly. Back to you, Stefan.